Hey, hello everyone. Hello everyone. Nice to be here with you again on this series. Um, Hopefully you get to see my screen. Everything is fine. We can start. What you're gonna see today, we will present you how Studio Web is here to help our users to explore their automation journey and how we can enrich that using AI. Then we will introduce the connector builder and how you can easily scale your automations using any systems you have in your enterprise. And then we will bring a live demo with all the capabilities we have today in the product around this, let's call them features for now. And also we will have enough time for some Q&A just in case you want to explore more. I will start with a brief recap about what is Studio Web, which is the newest member to our family of IDEs. It's basically a web version of Studio that allows anyone to write automations in a low code or an easy to use interface without the need to install any application on your machine. You will be ready to run and build automations directly in cloud. It's important to mention that it's compatible with previous products like Studio or Studio X. So your workflow will work across, will work on any robot. And if you have experience with Studio, you will find Studio Web similar, but optimized for building automations faster, I would say. Next, how can AI help with automation in general? As you know, in UiPath, we tried to break down the automation lifecycle into multiple stages. You first start with discovery, when you need to understand your process, your current process, and we believe AI can help you with that to better understand your processes and what can be automated. Next, we have the developer experience, and this is what we are going to present today. And UiPath plans to enhance the developer experience by lowering the entry barrier and making it easier and faster to build automations, RPA, etc. Test cases. We think this is important for people because we can bring more non-technical people to the digital transformation, and they can onboard on their AI journey using our product. And after the automation is live, it's deployed, we will bring AI that will extract the valuable insights from there and analyze large amounts of runtime logs and recommend you process improvements or fixes so your automation won't fail next time. Of course, we think that humans are important and they must be center for these AI experiences, and they must provide feedback to our robots, to our AI models. So we are making sure that humans are in control and they can control what the AI is doing, basically. Today, we're going to see some capabilities of Autopilot, especially the ones in Studio, actually in Studio Web. And Autopilot focuses on two types of experiences. First, it's a self-service experience when the user knows exactly what they want to automate and how to automate. And they can describe their need in natural language, and Autopilot will try to map this description to our set of activities and build a scaffold or a functional automation for you. Second category, it's the assisted experiences where the user are not able to describe directly in natural language what they want to achieve, just because this is more complex or it's a longer process. But for this case, we will assist the users in a step-by-step manner with assisted experiences to achieve their goal. Some examples of the self-service are the text to workflow, which you're going to see today, where anyone can build an automation from scratch without the need to have a previous experience. Other examples are the ability to generate forms using text or forms or paper forms. Some other examples are around generating text test cases or coded workflows. The assisted experiences might include ability to summarize your workflows, to have contextual suggestions like next step or alternative, or even in the future, we want to recommend you best practices and optimizations for current workflows. Next, we have the connector builder, and I'll ask my colleague Guy to pick it up from here.
Yeah. So for today's session, right, during the demo, we're going to switch from Studio, the workflow that Alex is building, to Connector Builder. Why are we doing that? Because we want to show you that API automation, right, as much as integration service and Studio already like bring these things very tightly together, there's only as much of connectors that we currently have in our list and and resources that we have available on our existing connectors. Connector Builder is an answer to that, right? If you want to connect to an application that you use on a daily basis, we'll use an example for to pull out stock information. Something that we will probably not necessarily build out and publish, right? If you want to build or connect to a third-party app that we don't have, there's a couple of ways within UiPath that you can do it. The HTTP activity pack is one, but if you want to build something robust that is built throughout the rest of the product, Connector Builder is your answer, right? It ties directly into the integration services framework where you can leverage a whole series of things. And you can build your connector just as we do, right? Very, very similar. Publish it to your tenant, and then you can switch over to Studio and start using it. Connector Builder has capabilities of understanding REST and JSON APIs. That's our main focus today. We do sometimes get questions about SOAP and WSDL, etc. That's out of scope for Connector Builder because we want to be doing our very best for modern APIs, right? On that, so once you built out that connector, and I'm going to do this live, you'll see that you can use authentication management very similarly as on our custom connectors. You can actually define it on the spot and alter things as you need. The outcome of a connector is of the connector builder is a connector in the tenant, but also exposing activities, right? So when you go to Studio, you can now use that connector without having to make the direct API calls, right? You can define what fields need to be on screen, etc. So that Studio integration has been super key for us because we just went GA last week with Connector Builder. We have been in preview for a long time. So those of you who answered on the poll that you used Connector Builder, my assumption is that was in preview. There was the biggest problem during preview, or the biggest reviews that we got from users was, how do I now properly consume the API that I built out in Connector Builder straight within Studio, right? And that's the big problem that we solved. We actually, and if you could switch to the next slide, we kind of revamped since 23.10 how integration service connectors are being consumed throughout the full product suite. We used to do, and that was the same thing for preview for Connector Builder, we had a specific activity pack for Connector Builder. And somebody's not on mute. So we used to have specific activity packs for all our connectors, right? Which was kind of a hard thing to like keep serving to everybody because we want to be faster with our connectors. We update our connectors, maintain them, add new functionality to it, as much from a UX perspective, as much as from an API perspective, right? We're adding resources, fixing resources, vendors that are updating their APIs. Our connector automatically updates for you. That's the goal that we try to achieve with integration service. However, when that happened, we had to always update the activity pack as well. You didn't really know about this. So we changed that entire infrastructure. And we now have, and that's what you see in the bottom of these two boxes, one single activity pack called UiPath.integration service.activities since 23.10, works in both Studio Desktop as Studio Web. And all the way downstream, right, as you see on that right box there, it goes to Studio, Studio Web, Orchestrator, robots, etc. It's implemented in the exact same way through that single activity pack. And Connector Builder, the end result of Connector Builder is yet another connector, right, to try to simplify it. So also ties into that same activity pack. So we don't have to do anything specific anymore to serve your custom connector. On the contrary, you now have the advantage when you build a connector that you can basically do what we do, right, for our connectors. To some extent, there's functionality that we're adding to Connector Builder, etc. But that's the gist of it, and that's one of the big reasons why we changed this infrastructure around. Now, if you look on that left side, it's speaking about vendor APIs, and the right side is the UiPath platform, right? I like to bring all of that typically together as integration service connector. What we do is we're bridging that gap, right? You have a vendor API that has very specific ways of dealing with that API. How do you authenticate to it? How do you make specific API calls? How do you provide headers and query parameters, etc.? There is some complexity vendor to vendor to vendor. And then within UiPath, because we want to be able to serve you this through Studio and Studio Web and downstream to robots and assistant, and always give you that consistent way of working with a connector, we try to standardize the moment that you import a connector as a connector definition, right? Following the integration service framework. And that's the really key part here, because the fact that we do that and you can do that with Connector Builder, your connector is now available throughout all these different products, right? And that's how you serve it. That's how you will use it. So I hope that that is helpful, because if you compare that to an HTTP activity pack as an example, where you can also just make API calls, the fact that it's scalable, right, across your tenant, you can share it, other people can authenticate to it, has built-in refresh token mechanism, etc. Because you tie into the IIS framework, that's where this is important, right? And that's why a connector is so relevant. And then the next slide. Great, live demo. Alex, back to you, because you'll kick this off with building a workflow.
Sure, let me navigate to Studio. So what we're gonna do today, let's take the example Guy shared with stock market, and we are gonna monitor a given stock ticker and get a brief description of that, get the current price, and share it with our team members. So if you navigate to Studio Web, you can find a lot of templates that can work for you. But let's say we look for stock. There are no templates with to help us with monitoring the stock market. So what we can do is to describe to our Autopilot what we want to do. And in this case, we will say that we want to get the stock latest value from Google Finance, get a brief description from, let's use OpenAI, because OpenAI is doing a great job in creating descriptions and text about various things. And then we can post this description and the price to our Slack team channel. And now I'm gonna hit generate. What is now happening in the background? We are analyzing the user input, basically a plain text description, and using our activities, we try to break down the user need into smaller tasks and assign different activities to fulfill each task. You will see that once the model replies, we can see a short preview like this one. So this is like a suggestion that the model made. Probably we can run this manually, get the latest stock value from Google Finance, then to get a brief description with OpenAI and post this to a Slack team channel. For me, this looks good, and I will continue in Studio. So basically, we will get a scaffold with all of these activities that should fulfill the task. Just because there is no Google Finance integration or there is no API-based activity that we can use to retrieve the stock price, what we're gonna do today, we're gonna use the automation. I've opened this page in advance, and we can try to build an automation that gets the market cap and the current price. So I'm gonna indicate in this tab that I want to use the finance. Okay. And there is a new capability called Autopilot for your automation that basically allows us to generate UI steps just by providing the description of what we want to achieve and having the target page. So let's instruct Autopilot that we want to get the market cap and current price. This is using and leveraging our computer vision knowledge, and it's analyzing the target page and tries to predict what are the best next actions to fulfill this task. You can see it generated a couple of activities that are basically retrieving the price. This is the selector, and it tried to generate the selector, but it could not have the full selector. And I need to also create an anchor for this. This should work. If you're familiar with your automation, you know this happens from time to time. Yeah, let's see. We have the second one, which is basically getting the market cap from the right side. And let's return to the current price, and let's try to make the selector a bit better and find a good anchor. Yeah, probably this should be good enough. No, it's not. Okay, I will save it like this and make sure we can continue our execution even if this doesn't work properly. And let's wait for 2 seconds. It should be good enough. Next, we see the OpenAI integration. This is basically integration-based activity that allows us to connect any automation with the generative AI providers. In this case, it's about OpenAI. So we can see that Autopilot said something like generate a brief description, for example, stock. Just because we don't have any variable of any argument defined. So let's say we want to have an argument called stock name. And for default, let's go with Tesla just for this demo to make it easy to build. So I'm gonna insert the stock name in here into the generate brief description. I am happy with this prompt because basically instructs OpenAI that I need a brief description for this one. Next activity is the Slack Slack send message, and I am able to select the channel. It picked up the random one, but in my case, I'm gonna go with some channel called Demo Autopilot. I have it open here, so you can see the results. As you can see, there are no messages posted on this channel. Okay, the message generated by Autopilot is that the latest value for stock is this value, and to have a brief description. Let's do the following thing. I'm gonna save the output of the market cap to a new variable and call it market cap. Markets. It's good enough, and I'm gonna create. So we are ready to update this. Instead of example stock, we're gonna use the argument with the stock name, and for the value, we're gonna use the market cap. And next, we can see that I'm not looking for the model, I'm looking for the top generated text. This is basically the first response from OpenAI. We are almost ready to test this. I just need to confirm one final thing. The model generated some extra output that I don't need, so I'm gonna clean them. Yeah, let's see it in action and test our automation. What's important to mention that Studio Web runs in serverless. That's a version of the robot we are hosting for our customers. So you don't need to do any installation. You don't need to do any preparation. Just because it's running for the first time, I didn't create an automation smart enough to accept the cookies. So I took control, and I have dismissed this pop-up. And yeah, hopefully the market cap is visible. If not, this is not my proudest moment for an automation. We can try one more time. Yeah, I bet everyone in this call, if they used our automation, they know that sometimes the element change. So let's try one more time to see. Okay, this is working as expected. Let's also do this and have a timeout for 3 seconds, and we can test it one more time. Yeah, you should remember I did not add the step to dismiss the cookie. So let's see if this time is better. No, just because it's a new session again. Okay. Right now it continued. We can navigate to the OpenAI integration. Everything executed. Now we can see in Slack. So the latest value is, just because my selector wasn't there, it failed.
Cool.
Yeah, you can see something generated automatically by OpenAI. Next, I'm gonna hand it to Guy, where he will show an alternative and how to build a connector.
Yeah. So as much as that is cool and as much as that works, integration service, and that's why I'm on the call, right, is trying to like help out with a lot of these UI automations where, and then specifically with connector builder, right? Where we don't have a connector today, and you would have to go into the UI and try to grab the right elements. What we're trying to do today is come up with an alternative. And rather than using Google, I found this, and I found it because it's free, and I'll bring it in because it's always a good test case here, is an application called polygon.io for their website. They have an open API that has a whole set of resources here that they expose. Most of them you have to pay for, but there's these four here that aggregates group daily bars, daily open close, and previous close that are free to use. So if you look at their website, so our goal is to you build a connector for polygon.io, use their API, bring it in into connector builder, and configure it as such so that we can make an execution of that API call, publish the connector to my tenant. Alex and I are on the same tenant, which means after I published it, I can hand the screen back to Alex, and he should be able to start using that, basically swap out the UI automation and use my connector to get the same value out, right? So within that being said, starting within integration service, you can click build your connector here, and then you get your design connectors. I have environments where I have 50 of them because I obviously have to test the application a lot. Polygon.io does not expose a Swagger. If they would do, it would be really easy to start. You could say from URL, paste in their Swagger information or their Postman collection, and we would basically strip that out for you. Let's start from blank here. And let's say that we're building, which is always interesting for demos because then you see everything that's going on behind the scenes. Let's say polygon.io. I already downloaded their logo here. So we uploaded that, and then let's say create. And then, so what I will do is where Alex was able to stay in studio the entire time, I obviously have to alt tab back into the documentation, and I'll start from the very top, right? So I'm on polygon.io, and this is their stocks API documentation right here. And I already signed in. So if you want to do this yourself, they have on their main page, they have a button, sign up for our API for free API usage or something. So you can do that, and you'll get an API key. Here it says in their plan what you can actually do with that, right? So five free API calls every minute. So let's not go too crazy because otherwise we'll blow this thing up. It starts with authentication, which is their documentation is actually pretty good. It starts with authentication, stating there's two ways you can use our APIs. At all times, you need to provide an API key, right? You can either make these calls directly like this. So if you are if you just built this for yourself and you're using the HTTP activity pack, right? You could basically copy paste this, put that in the HTTP activity pack because it's your token, right? And the token from their authentication says it doesn't expire. If you want to build a far more robust scenario, like I am doing, my API key has five API calls per minute, but Alex also signed up for this, right? So if I build a connector, I can share that connector. He can authenticate to it with his own API key, right? Very, very easily through our authentication management. So let's go for this scenario here. And but it always starts obviously with stating what's the base API in connector builder to the base URL, right? To start making every API call to. Well, let's put that in, and then let's switch to this authentication tab. Connector builder exposes a variety of authentication types out of the box. What we're doing really is we're telling you, hey, these are the most commonly used patterns that we see throughout, right? Whatever you select here, you'll see that this table updates with a bunch of parameters, and we're trying to identify which parameters are really key for you to set. Typically, right, if you set up an OAuth application, you'd have to deal with a client ID and secret because you build an OAuth app on the vendor side, right? That exposes that ID and secret, and you bring that in. In our scenario, we will select personal access token. We have two things here, an API key and a personal access token. Same thing as with all these other things. The end result of whatever you select and whatever you configure in that table below is really how you'll be making API calls at the very end. right? The header information, whether you're sending a bearer token, whether you're sending a basic username and password that needs to be encoded. We do that stuff for you depending on what you selected here. So the reason I'm not going for API key, even though their documentation states, here's your API key, is because they want us to send it as authentication, and I could probably see that if I edit here. So they want us to send authorization, right, as a header towards them every time you make an API call. So if I switch back here, right, they want us to send this format, which is kind of like the typical OAuth 2 output format, even though they don't have an OAuth 2 flow. So authorization, bearer, and then your token. So and that's exactly what this personal access token does behind the scenes. Bearer my token, I'll just leave that as such. I'm actually not going to change anything. Now, when I add a connection here, you'll see that we'll open our authentication screen, and we're asking for what's your personal access token. I can close this again, and I can say, you can play around with these values. Provide your API key to follow their language a little bit, and then let's say add connection. And so this changed here, right? So let's copy paste my token in there. So this is my token. And this is a screen that Alex will see as well. That's why this is important. That's why Connector Builder exposes the screen, right? Because once you publish this connector, any user of that connector will go through that same screen. So we are supposedly connected. So the way to test this now is to say, let's create a new resource, a get or a get by ID. And we'll go through their documentation and we'll say the previous close, or Alex, maybe daily open and close. So the difference here is you provide a stock and a date, or the previously closed is basically what it closed at. I'll make it simple. I'll use this one. And all I'm doing here is, so we already use this as the base URL, right? So if I go back to Connector Builder, the base URL is this api.polygon.io. I'll copy paste everything behind it minus this API key, because we actually don't want that. Copy and use that as the base here, and we'll give this a name. What was that called? Previously closed. Closed. And then we'll make this a get create. Cool. So a couple of things that happened here. Let's first run this, send request, and then adjust to true. There we go, execute. So it's not entirely what we want, right? We did get a response, which is great, but it's not what we want, because we want Alex to state, hey, let me close this again. So we already know, just for the record, right? I executed this. Let's execute that again. I got a response back. So my connection was great, right? It worked. Otherwise, it would throw an exception. And you can see that here in the request when you switch to. So this debugger here, speaking to a developer audience, I'm hoping, or we hope, that you really like this. We tell you your call was successful. You made an actual call here, and you can swap through all these things. You provided a query parameter adjusted equals true, and you also gave us these headers is how you call the vendor, right? So authorization with that bearer token. Remember, that's what I just configured. Then you can go through these different steps. The provider request, that's the same as our request, because we are not really manipulating anything. The provider gave a response back that looks like this, and then Connector Builder, look how this response is different, right? Connector Builder said, oh, let's make it an array that has a single object here. Now we can kind of manipulate this data, and we can say, and that's what I want to do right now, right? So let's dive in here. The first thing I don't like about this is it is stating Apple stock right in there. So let's change that as actually a variable query parameter, and so let's say stock, and then add parameter, and let's call that stock provider type. It's in the path, right? And then we'll still call it Tesla is what Alex was wondering, what stock to monitor and stock to monitor. So these values, this display name, is how Studio will actually provide the information on screen. So now when I run this, stay stock. So now when I run this, save and continue, you'll see that we now ask for a path parameter, right, in there. And let's execute that. And the response is still an array, but only one element in there. So let's change that as well. But notice how we now got the Tesla rather than the Apple one. So there's a couple of things I want to do here. We, in the meantime, have gotten response fields from the vendor, right? We want to manipulate stating, I'm actually going to remove all of this. Delete all fields. And then because I want to get to a single object ideally, and I'm going to say the results, the response key is results, save, and I'm also going to turn pagination off. We don't want that because there's no pages, it's always a single object. And now our API call looks a little better here, right? From a setup, let's run this again, execute.
One note, just don't let it with Tesla so people don't think we fake that and hard code it. Do it with Apple.
Fair statement. So I'll change this again to Apple like that, I think here. And then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to a get by ID. And now let's make that call again. So the default value is Apple, right? Execute. And we still get this array back. Alex, that does mean that you're going to see something, I think. In Studio, you might see a list results, and then you're going to have to grab the first object. I could typically manipulate that, but I'm kind of at time here. But you should be fine, I think. So the only thing I have to do right now, right, he can play around with this in Studio, because disregarding how I built this API, what I want to do, so we have a name here. So if you click on this activity, Alex will get a get record that states previously closed. He'll see my connector, right, with this activity in there. And then on screen, he should see this, what's stock to monitor. So I'll publish this as is, publish. And then that takes us to integration service. So at this point, we now have a connector, right? Polygon.io. This is all the details that I did here. I'm on the administrator screen because I'm the one who built it. But if you go to integration service itself, in the catalog is now a Polygon.io, right? And you can also tell that it has one activity in here, this get record that we built. So that being said, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And then if all goes well, Alex is going to take back over. He's going to go into his flow, and he should be seeing this connector I just built. And then he can authenticate with his own credentials and change values for the stock that he wants to monitor.
So what I'm going to do, I'm going to disable this use browser, and we're going to switch to the activity that he created. And I'm going to type for Polygon. You
might have to do a hard refresh, maybe.
Yeah, let's see.
So what we do behind the scenes, right, is we publish it, and integration service is telling Studio, and there might sometimes be some kind of a delay on here, but it's telling, there we go, there it was. Oh, that's weird, it showed up there, Polygon.io, yep. So we're telling Studio, hey, there's a new connector in the catalog, right? And as much as we're trying to make that instant, sometimes there's like this little bit of a delay that we are trying to close the gap on. Usually works really good, but sometimes you have to do a hard refresh in Studio for it to show up.
Yeah, remember I didn't do anything. I just watched the demo he did. So I just kept my project open, and now I'm ready to connect. While he was presenting, I created an account on the website, and I can use one of the API keys provided. I'm going to go with the default one. And gonna replace these two. Okay, now back to the workflow. So we want the previously closed object. And what stock to monitor? In our case, we want to use the stock name. And what is adjusted? What do I have to provide in here?
Oh, that's unfortunate. I should have said not required. You can just type in true because it's a Boolean, and their website says always use true. So you can just type in true as a value. So in Connector Builder, I can manipulate that, right? I can say on screen on those query parameters and the path parameters, I can say adjusted, don't ask for it. I can basically flag it as not required. You still provide the value on the API, but in Studio, you wouldn't see it.
Okay, now that we configured this, let's update our Slack message. And instead of the market, let's use the get record value and the previously closed. This one should be fine, you said? Oh.
Yeah, I'm curious. The one problem we might have is that my response looked like an array, but I'm curious how Studio's going to deal with that.
Okay, we can see. No, actually,
there, it's all the so all that H, T, etc. are actually the responses. Maybe I should have renamed those as well, because what I think you want is, let me run this query on my end here. You probably, so T stands for the stock that we're grabbing.
capital
And
T
then I
or
think the capital T one. Yeah, do you see that? Let me switch back. Yeah, capital T is the stock that we grab. I should have renamed those because I can change that, right? So their API gives it back as such. And I think you want to grab C for closed, which is .c. And that's the actual value of is the number, right? That comes back.
Yeah. Another cool capability we put in Studio Web is this test, which basically you can see how this fancy expression would return. Let's say I have Apple and 1, 2, 3. Basically, you would see that the latest value of this and also the description. And I am ready to test this one more time, and I'll let Guy continue what he was going to say.
No, so all that, so the provider, and that's the cool thing about Connector Builder. If you're building just through the HTTP activity pack as an example, right? You'll deal with the connector as it is. Oops, we got an exception there. What does it say? JSON reader item is not an object. Interesting. I'm gonna make a change here because it really was very persistent in pushing that out. And shall I share my screen again, Alex?
Yep, for sure. Back to you.
So it was kind of persistent in stating I want an array there. And rather than figuring that out, what I can do is, so I'm going back into that same connector. And it's actually a good use case, right? Let's say it failed on Alex is my consumer. It failed on his end. I changed this back to a get. A get by default expects a response. And what I'll also do is I'll change this adjusted here to required. So the differences between get and get by ID really translate back to Studio. Is a get, we expect you to work with an array. So this will now, if you switch here, be under list records rather than on their get record, which Studio then knows, oh, if it's a list records, I'm going to get an array back. So that might be more helpful for you. And I just also switch this adjusted to required no. So I'm going to publish this again, Alex. And then ideally you remove, I'm going to switch the screen back to you. You remove the get record and you should be seeing with probably a refresh of your screen, the new version of this connector will now have a list record in Studio.
Yeah, let's load it one more time.
When you say add activity, yep.
So you said I should go with the list record from Poly. No, not that. Poly. Oh, list all records, basically.
Yep, perfect. And then remove the other one. So see how it's good that the other one is still on there. We obviously have to remove that because it's no longer valid, but the interaction is a little different, right? And see how adjusted is no longer on your screen. So that's good.
Yep. So all I needed was to replace this activity. And now let's, okay, what happened in here?
So there you probably have to grab the first record now because it's an array, right? Studio thinks you have an array coming back.
Yep. So this one, I'm going to insert value and use previously closed.
Yep.
So I'm going to use the first item, basically.
Yep.
Now let's see. All of this, it's as expected. I just need to clean this noise, and we should be ready to test it one more time.
So for those who use Connector Builder in preview, that switching back and forth to, I was successful, that's good. So that switching back and forth to editing your connector and then seeing the result in Studio, we know is a very horrible experience, right? So that's why it took us a while to like go GA and make sure that we got that right. So everything seems like
executed. Let's
cool.
see the outcome.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess we just put the object in there rather than the values of the object, because we just grabbed first object. So now it has the object in there with the, so we should be able to like do a .c or something.
.c, .string. Okay, let's run it one more time. Yeah, this is the life of a developer. You can't have everything working from the first attempt because it would be too easy. Everybody would be doing that.
Imagine that we pay attention to detail here, huh? As we run this.
Yeah, exactly. So everything ran successfully. Now let's see the end result. Okay, that's already looking better. So the latest value for Tesla stock was 235. And we also
That's
have
awesome.
the right description got from OpenAI that is describing our flow.
Yep. So that's great. And so, again, I want to emphasize why connector builder is so key in this story, right? We use just this random connector that we found online to try to solve this problem. But most specifically, the scenario is good, right? If Alex, imagine that Alex is like a persona that doesn't really know how to deal with APIs and has worked with UI automation his entire life. You can ask somebody within your enterprise, within your COE to like, hey, can you build this? Can you like, my UI automation fails regularly. Can you try to look at it? You as a developer can come in and state, oh, I found this application, or yes, we have an application, right, that exposes APIs. Why don't we use that? Connector builder should be your answer, right, to make this far more robust. And then you can build it, publish it, and then you have the end user. The only thing they really need to do is connect to it with their credentials, right? Because that's the key part here. Alex used his own credentials. And then he just used the activities that I exposed as the connector builder at this point in time, right?
Okay,
Awesome.
I'm gonna stop share my screen. Yeah, it's looking good. Back to you, Christina, or Roxana for the slides, I think.
Well, now, thank you a lot, Alex and Guy. Now it's your chance to actually try the product. You can test Connect Builder. Will be in GA, general availability, really soon, this month. And you can actually explore UiPath Autopilot. You can sign up for our insider program. We'll have 3 of them for the moment, for Studio, for Apps, and for Test Suite. And actually, we'll have a full session dedicated to UiPath Autopilot in December. So you can save your seat. It's also a free seat. And the greatest part for us is that in December we'll launch the next Dev Dive series. So have a look on UiPath community because we'll launch it soon. And now, because we don't have too much time, I really want to take your live Q&As.
Okay, so at this point, I think most of the chat questions were addressed because we had so many colleagues in the session, and we thank each of them for the help. I noticed Robert was very active in the chat as well. But at this point, I will enable everyone to unmute and let you please ask questions. So anyone is able to unmute themselves now and openly ask questions to our hosts, our presenters today. So feel free to raise your hand and or unmute yourself and speak up.
I saw a question. I'll go first here. I saw a question on the chat that I don't think was answered. Whether the experience is the same in Studio. I don't know if that was when I was talking about Connector Builder or Alex about AI. But for Connector Builder, I can tell you, yes, the outcome is, so it's a connector, right? That connector is part of your catalog of on your tenant, right, for integration service, and therefore we distribute it, right? It's now part of the catalog. So disregarding what experience you're in, you will see your connector, whether that's Studio Web or Studio Desktop.
Yeah, and regarding the AI capabilities, we will first introduce them in Studio Web, but we will take the good experiences and also have them on the desktop version.
Yep. Thanks, Alexander. Thanks, guy. Russell here. I asked that question. So because there's a package connector builder in local studio, where do you still have to have it, or I saw you have the integration service that activities there? Or I was still confused which one.
Yeah, so and Studio Web obviously doesn't really expose that, but as I was talking through my slides, right, there is now a single activity pack, UiPath.integrationService.activities. When you're in Studio Desktop, the same thing in Studio Web, obviously, but Studio Desktop as well has been altered, but you have to be on 23.10 or later, right? Because we'll now obviously be supported from now on. Studio Desktop is automatically going, if you use one of your custom connectors, Studio Desktop will automatically know that it's that new activity pack, and it will download it on the spot for you the moment that you drag one of the activities on Canvas. So you'll see a small pop-up in Studio Desktop stating we're installing and downloading your activity pack. And then it becomes that activity pack, right? The integration service activities becomes a dependency on your project. And from now on out, you're good to go. But you need to, so the prerequisite is you need to be on point then.
You still need a connector builder package.
No, not the connector builder package. It's the general integration service package.
Which gets added automatically. So you don't need to install anything. Once you see an activity you want to use under the available node, you just double click on it or you drag it and it will work for you.
Yeah, because honestly I didn't have a good experience with although it was in private preview previously with a connector builder package last when it was in preview. So
yeah, so we know that, and I'm glad that you bring that up, and I've kind of been referring to it, right, with stating we've been in preview for so long, and we knew that we didn't have a good solution, right? That's why we didn't go GA and we kept it in preview, but that package was not the right answer. So we have removed it from basically from the package manager, right? Because the new solution is that your connector, rather than having to install a specific package, your connector is just going to show up on the left-hand side of Studio Desktop.
Yeah, yep. We'll try this. Thank you.
I think Brian raised the hand. Thank you, Russell, for the question. Russell is our first AI certified person from the community.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, thanks. This is Brian Lamb. My question is more around, the future anticipated use of this in production from a licensing perspective. My understanding is that when we use integration service, it's billed on a per API call, essentially rate. So is my understanding correct that we are also billed for any API calls that are invoked as part of integration service in the, let's just say, dev and test environments as well? So when we get a license for a certain quantity of API calls for integration service, we're being dinged each time we use it in dev and test and prod, right? So we would have to sort of forecast how much our devs and testers are going to try to use this thing in combination with the production volume. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that is a correct statement. The reason being because all of those are probably on cloud, right? Because I'm assuming you're not doing your dev. It's an assumption on staging. So that's probably cloud, but on a different tenant or org, I would imagine. So yes, that statement is correct. Now on licensing, I would like to add, we know that this is a very specific topic for all of our customers, not just connector builder wise, but integration service in general. It's a topic that sits with our management, then they're trying to discuss this and make this better, because we want you to use, right? We believe we really bring really great value to the UiPath platform with integration service for API automation. We want you to use this. So we're thinking about how can we change some of the licensing details moving forward. I hope that answered your question a little bit.
Yep, thanks.
Awesome. Next.
Alan. I think he's
Christina.
unmuted already. Hello.
Am I audible?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Personally, for me, the presentation was on point. I don't have any specific question, just to thank the team that presented, and as well as the organizing team, the product team. Yeah, the hiccups that happened, it's as you said earlier, that's the life of a developer. So it's very, very, very much expected. Thanks for the presentation.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks for the kind words.
You're welcome.
Well, thank you. Anybody else who wants to ask a question? Don't see any other raised hands. But we still have like 3 minutes if you wish to ask a question. If not, thank you everyone for joining us today. I think it was a really good session, certainly interactive, and certainly with a lot of product buying from UiPath. So many colleagues present, a huge help. Roxana?
Many thanks a lot. And see you in December.
Yeah. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Guy.
Hey, yeah, of course. I'm glad we had such a big turnout. That was fantastic. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.